This happened last year when I decided to attend a massive international Comic-Con. I've always been a huge fan of these events where thousands of people dress up as their favorite characters and just go absolutely wild. This year's event was being held at a massive expo center in a big city. I'd spent months putting together a detailed, gruesome zombie survivor costume. When I arrived, the whole place had this incredible festival energy. Noise everywhere, laughter, people decked out in the most amazing costumes you could imagine. The first few hours were brilliant. I got photos with loads of people, browsed through different stalls, and soaked it all in. But I had absolutely no idea that this wonderful day was about to turn into the most terrifying experience of my life. The convention center was so enormous that getting lost was genuinely easy. Despite being surrounded by thousands of people, when you don't know a single soul, the loneliness hits you differently. By midday, the exhibition hall was absolutely packed. You could barely move without bumping into someone. I decided to step aside and take a breather. I stood near a large pillar, scrolling through the photos on my phone. And then, out of nowhere, I got this strange feeling, like someone was staring at me. You know that feeling, when the hairs on the back of your neck just stand up? I looked around, but with that kind of crowd, trying to focus on any one face was completely impossible. A little while later, my eyes landed on someone across the crowd. He was wearing a medieval plague doctor costume, that long-beaked black mask, a flowing black cloak, and a top hat. Costumes like that are fairly common at conventions, but something about this person felt genuinely off. He wasn't glancing around like everyone else, and he didn't seem remotely interested in any of the stalls. His mask was pointed directly at me, and he was standing completely still. It felt like, in that entire crowd, I was the only thing he was looking at. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just part of his character, I told myself. I moved on. I headed over to Artist Alley, where the lighting was a bit dimmer and the stalls were packed tightly together. I was browsing through different artworks when I suddenly felt heavy footsteps right behind me. I turned around, and my stomach dropped. The plague doctor was standing just a few steps away. His face and eyes were hidden behind that mask, but his entire body was turned directly towards me. The panic started setting in. In a crowd that massive, the same person ending up right behind me twice. That couldn't be a coincidence. I picked up my pace and started deliberately weaving through complicated routes, hoping to lose him. I made my way to one of the big panel rooms, turned around, and he was gone. I let out a long breath. Maybe I'd imagined it, I told myself. Maybe he really was just walking the same way. I convinced myself it was nothing and tried to enjoy the rest of the convention. About an hour passed. I was standing at a gaming booth when I caught a reflection in the glass in front of me. There, at the very back of the crowd behind me, that same long black cloak and beaked mask. My heart just about stopped. This wasn't a coincidence. This person was deliberately following me. At this point, my only goal was to put as much distance between us as possible. I headed for the main hall, the most crowded area I could find. I figured if anywhere was going to lose him, it was there. I pushed through, bumping into shoulders, just trying to keep moving. I didn't look back once. I kept cutting from one hall to the next until I eventually found myself in a part of the convention center that was noticeably quiet. It was a long corridor leading to some old meeting rooms, where nothing was currently going on. I thought I'd finally shaken him. There was something unsettling about that corridor. The noise from the main hall had faded into a low, distant hum. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. My heart was still hammering. I wondered whether I should find security. But what would I even say? That a bloke in a costume was staring at me? They'd think I was being ridiculous. I decided I'd just head straight outside and go back to my Airbnb. I was just about to turn around when, from the far end of the corridor, I heard it. A low, rough sound. A muffled laugh, coming from behind a mask. I looked up, and there he was, standing at the end of the corridor. He raised his hand and gestured slowly for me to come inside. The floor felt like it had vanished beneath me. I bolted immediately and shoved open the door of a nearby restroom, slamming it behind me. The room was completely empty. I rushed into one of the cubicles, locked the door, and climbed up onto the toilet so my feet wouldn't be visible underneath. My entire body was shaking. A few seconds later, the main restroom door slowly creaked open. Someone had come in. The footsteps were quiet, but the heavy thud of boots on the tiled floor echoed through the entire room. The person stopped at the sink. I held my breath. My heart was pounding so loudly I was convinced he'd hear it. He turned the tap on, let the water run, then switched it off. And then the footsteps began moving towards the cubicles. He stopped at each door, gave it a gentle push, then moved on to the next. First door, second door, third door. I was in the last cubicle. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Through the gap at the bottom, I could see his black boots. He just stood there. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. That half-minute felt longer than any moment of my life. Then a hand gripped the door handle and twisted it hard. It didn't open. It was locked. He tried again, rattling it violently this time. I squeezed my eyes shut, And then, out of nowhere, a loud voice echoed from outside. The main door burst open and a group of lads came tumbling in, laughing and messing about. The footsteps outside my cubicle quickly retreated, and I heard the restroom door close. He was gone. I stayed exactly where I was for another 10 minutes, until I was absolutely certain the danger had passed. When I finally stepped out, those lads were staring at me like I had 3 heads. I said nothing. I just practically ran until I found the nearest exit. By the time I got outside, evening had fallen. The cold air hit my sweat-soaked face and brought me back to my senses, just slightly. My Airbnb was only 4 blocks away. I just needed to get there. The streets were still busy with people heading home from the convention. I walked as fast as I could without breaking into a full run. Several times I was convinced someone was watching me, but I couldn't bring myself to look back. I just needed to get inside. My Airbnb was in an older but seemingly safe apartment block. I punched in the gate code and stepped inside. The lobby was empty. My room was on the 4th floor. I pressed the lift button and waited. The doors opened. I stepped in and hit the button for floor 4. The doors were just sliding shut when a black-gloved hand shoved through the gap and forced them back open. My throat closed up completely. The doors opened fully. Standing right there was the plague doctor. He stepped inside. The doors closed. The 2 of us, alone, in that tiny box. He was barely 2 feet away from me. He didn't press a single button, which meant he was either going to the 4th floor too, or he simply didn't care. That grotesque leather mask was right in front of my face. Behind it, I could hear this strange, wet, rasping sound with every breath he took. I slipped my hand into my pocket and gripped my keys as tightly as I could. The lift crawled upward, floor by floor, and time felt like it had completely stopped. The lift stopped at the 4th floor. The doors opened. I didn't waste a single second. I shot out into the corridor and sprinted to my room. I didn't look back. With shaking hands, I got the key in the lock, burst through the door, slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt. I slid down the door and sat on the floor, completely breathless. I'm safe, I thought. And then someone knocked on my door. Hard. 1, 2, 3 times. I froze. Then, through the gap at the bottom of the door, a small folded piece of paper was slid inside. The knocking stopped. Footsteps faded down the corridor. With trembling hands, I picked it up. Written in red marker, in a single line, "Your costume was brilliant. Next time, give me a chance to play along too." I didn't sleep a single second that night. First thing in the morning, I was on the earliest flight back home. Conventions are supposed to be fun, but after that day, I've never once felt truly safe in a crowd again.